What's up guys, this is Mike Teavee, and this is actually my first video. I'm going to be discussing the Bloodthirster versus the Blade of the Ruined King changes, how they affect your gameplay in your champion pool, and basically kind of why certain champions are more in the meta now with those changes versus the champions that were in the meta pre 4.12 patch. Okay, so starting off, we have the Bloodthirster, which these are the current changes, the current stats. It gives 80 attack damage, 20% lifesteal unique, so that means that you can't stack Bloodthirsters anymore. The passive is Bloody Shield. Your lifesteal overheals you, converting the excess healing into a shield that absorbs up to 50 to 350 damage and decays out of combat for 25 seconds. And on to Blade of the Ruined King is 25 attack damage, 10% lifesteal, plus 40% attack speed. Basically the passive is the exact same, the damage just got changed. The active is what really kind of set things off. It got reduced by 5%, but it's still the exact same. The movement speed also got reduced by 5%. Now quickly touching on the pre-patch changes, 70 attack damage, lifesteal is 12%. This one has stacks to where you build them up farming. And Blade of the Ruined King has 25 attack damage. The price didn't change. 15% lifesteal, 40% attack speed. You only deal 5% of the target's current health and physical damage. And the active is a lot stronger. You steal 30% of their movement speed, dealing 15% of their maximum health and physical damage. That's the big change on Blade of the Ruined King, and I'll touch on that in a second. Basically touching on the side-by-side comparison, the old Bloodthirster is 3,200 gold. The new one was raised to 3,500 gold. This makes it almost as expensive as the Infinity Edge, which is why a lot of players are not running Bloodthirster first, especially because of the passive being changed. The new Bloodthirster is more of a defensive item, whereas the old Bloodthirster was more of a power spike item. The lifesteal got reduced 2%. And quickly moving over to the Blade of the Ruined King changes, it's still 3,200 gold. The attack damage stayed the same. The lifesteal was reduced by 5%. 40% attack speed still. This is really what changes things, is the passive changes. The old one did 5% of the target's current health. The new one does 8% of the target's current health, making it better for basic attack champions. And the second part of the passive is drains the target champion. It got reduced by 5%, the active did, of their maximum health. The movement speed also got reduced by 5%, so that's a pretty big hit to the classic Blade of the Ruined King. And the reason why I'm spending so much time on the Blade of the Ruined King as opposed to whenever I compared the Bloodthirster is because these passive changes indirectly nerf champions that rely on the active, such as Zed, while indirectly buffing AD carries such as Tristana, Kog'Maw. Basically all of the AD carries that you see in the LCS right now, and including some top laners such as Irelia, who got a buff because she's a basic attack reliant champion. And aside from bringing new champions into the meta, it altered builds of older champions that are still in the meta, building Blade of the Ruined King because Bloodthirster doesn't quite stack up as much. It also brought forth the Blade of the Ruined King Yumu's Ghostblade build, where you get more basic attacks off while having the passive percentage health proc. And pros for the current Bloodthirster are, it's now better for raw damage. It did get a plus 10 damage increase. It's now a defensive item with high damage, increased lifesteal and AD. Shield helps against assassins and no longer have to stack passive, so you don't have to ramp up to a power spike. And as I said, the shield helps against getting assassinated or just instantly getting picked off. The cons are it no longer grants bonus AD and lifesteal. It really is only viable on burst AD champions such as Graves, or the classic champions that just rely on heavy AD and not prolonged fighting. It costs almost as much as an Infinity Edge now. And it changed into more of a team fighting item rather than a laning item, which is why you don't see people build it first anymore. And it's generally a third item as a defensive item after Zeal and Infinity Edge. Another thing I almost forgot to touch on is the fact that the lifesteal is now unique, so you can't just stack, say, two Bloodthirsters anymore. You have to stack, say, a Bloodthirster and a Blade of the Ruin King if you want any extra lifesteal. Now moving on to the new Blade of the Ruin King, the passive is now better for basic attack champions, as I said, which is why a lot of AD carries are becoming really OP in this current meta, especially with the attack speed item increases. It's better for tank shredding. Uh, it's also an indirect buff to immobile marksman, which is basically the AD carry meta that is currently, such as Kog'Maw and Jinx still being in the meta. And onto the cons, the lifesteal was lowered, the active damage was reduced by 5%, indirectly nerfing champions such as Zed who rely on the active damage. The movement speed also lowered by 5%, reducing kiting potential that you steal from somebody else. And the cutlass was nerfed to 8% lifesteal, making it kind of less valuable early game, and it's why a lot of people sit on the Vamp Scepter rather than spending that extra gold on the Bilgewater Cutlass. And basically, just to kind of wrap things up, the new Bloodthirster is more of a defensive item. It also gained a lot of attack damage, so it's more of kind of a raw attack damage item with more lifesteal, compensating for the loss of the passive. So this is better for champions that rely more on raw damage, such as Graves, who uses Buckshot and it scales off AD, and just other champions kind of like that. And not discounting the viability at all, Bloodthirster is still a very viable item. It's just more of a defensive item rather than a first pick in lane. And the reason why Riot changed this is because they'd rather have higher kill participation between the AD carries in a lane rather than it just being a passive farming lifesteal fest. And they just kind of wanted to make them more viable, and they felt the Bloodthirster was a little bit too strong for laning, because nobody really got forced out unless you were forced away from your creep wave, which kind of snowballed the lane. And basically Riot now is kind of, they're producing a lot of anti-snowballing methods, and this is kind of one of them. And the reason why the Blade of the Ruin King active was changed is because 2 patches ago or so, the Randuin's Omen was nerfed to make it easier for AD carries to be able to kite away, and they put to compensate more on the passive, the health shredding, to kind of help out with the AD carries having to fight against a bunch of tanks in this new meta. I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. This is actually my first video, and if you have any comments, questions, any criticism, just put it in the comments box. I'd love to read it, good or bad. I'd like to see what I'm doing wrong, what I could do better. And if the editing seemed a bit rough, it's because I do not actually have an editing software, but in the future I hope to get one, and I hope to improve on that. I also hope that this video helped clarify the patch changes in some way or another, and thank you for